Welcome back to CIA Declassified. Tibet, 1959. The People's Liberation Army was tightening its grip on the plateau. To the world, it was a spiritual tragedy. To the CIA, it was a strategic opportunity to bleed the Chinese dragon. But how do you train a resistance force in secret when their home is 15,000 feet above sea level? You find a place that looks just like it. You find Camp Hale, Colorado. This was Operation FURRY, a program so secret that even the local authorities in Colorado were told the unusual looking men in the woods were part of a classified atomic energy test. The declassified history of the CIA's Tibetan program, primarily under the code names ST Circus and Operation FURRY, reveals a massive logistical undertaking. Between 1958 and 1964, the CIA trained approximately 250 Tibetan resistance fighters at Camp Hale, Colorado. They were flown in via unmarked aircraft with blacked out windows to avoid detection. The agency taught these monks and mountain men the art of sabotage, radio communication, and high altitude guerrilla tactics. A quote from a declassified CIA historical review, the CIA's internal history of the Tibetan program. The Tibetan project was one of the most difficult and expensive covert operations ever undertaken by the agency. It involved the delivery of men and material across the Himalayas at altitudes that pushed our aircraft to their absolute physical limits. The goal was to sustain a resistance that could divert Chinese military resources away from other theaters. End quote. The agency provided the Chushi Gangdruk, the Tibetan volunteer force, with millions of dollars in weaponry, including M1 Garand rifles and recoilless rifles. The monks were required to set aside their vows of nonviolence for the duration of the conflict, leading to the surreal sight of Buddhist monks practicing mortar strikes in the Colorado Rockies. To facilitate the insertion of these agents, the CIA utilized the Skyhook, or Fulton surface-to-air recovery system. This allowed a low-flying aircraft to snag a balloon lofted line and winch a Tibetan operative directly from the ground into the plane. This technology was essential for extracting high-value intelligence assets from behind Chinese lines without requiring the aircraft to land on treacherous, high-altitude terrain. A quote from Kenneth Noss, a CIA case officer. They were the most motivated students we ever had. They weren't fighting for an ideology. They were fighting for their homes and their God King. Their endurance was superhuman. We would see these men hike miles through deep Colorado snow with 60-pound packs, chanting mantras the entire way without breaking a sweat. End quote. One of the greatest intelligence windfalls of the Cold War resulted from this program. In 1961, Tibetan guerrillas ambushed a Chinese military convoy and captured a satchel of classified documents. These papers revealed the catastrophic failure of the Great Leap Forward and the extent of the Sino-Soviet split, providing the U.S. government with its first internal look at the domestic crisis crippling the People's Republic of China. While the training camp at Camp Hale is now public knowledge, the files regarding the Dalai Lama's escape logistics remain heavily redacted. The heaviest redactions in the FURRY logs occurred during the 1959 escape of the Dalai Lama to India. There is heavy speculation that the CIA's Special Activities Division had a direct kinetic role in holding the mountain passes for the Dalai Lama's caravan. The theory suggests the redactions hide the fact that CIA-trained Tibetans engaged in a massive secret battle against the Chinese army to allow the spiritual leader to cross the border safely. Further speculation surrounds the Indian border memos. Some analysts believe the redactions cover the CIA's use of Tibetan refugees to plant nuclear-powered sensors in the Himalayas to monitor Chinese atomic tests. It is theorized that several of these nuclear devices were lost in the snow and remain active today, a fact the agency desperately wishes to keep hidden from the Indian government. There is also deep curiosity regarding the names of the third country liaisons mentioned in the logs. Historians speculate that the redactions mask the involvement of the Taiwanese intelligence services and the Royal Thai Air Force, who allegedly provided the secret black sites used for refueling the C-130s before they made the perilous hump jump over the Himalayas into Tibet. Was Operation FURRY a success? Tactically, it was a stalemate. Strategically, it was a tragedy. While the resistance caused significant casualties among Chinese troops, it could not stop the eventual occupation of Tibet. A quote from a resistance liaison: "The CIA gave us the tools to fight, but they never gave us the tools to win. We were a card in their game with China. When the game changed, the card was discarded." End quote. The program was abruptly terminated in the early 1970s following Henry Kissinger's rapprochement with China. The CIA-trained fighters were left stranded in the Mustang region of Nepal without support, eventually leading to their forced disarmament. In a final grim chapter, the Nepalese government, under pressure from Beijing, set troops to dismantle the remaining resistance camps in 1974. The Dalai Lama was forced to send a recorded message to his former soldiers, pleading with them to lay down their arms to avoid further bloodshed. Several of the CIA's most decorated Tibetan commanders committed suicide rather than surrender their weapons to the Nepalese. A quote from Roger McCarthy, head of CIA Tibet Task Force: "We gave them hope, and we took it away. It's a heavy thing to live with. We trained them to be soldiers, but we couldn't give them a country to come home to." End quote. Despite the political failure, Operation FURRY led to critical breakthroughs in clandestine logistics. For instance, high-altitude airdrops. The CIA perfected the Himalayan drop using specialized pallets that could survive the extreme wind shears of the Tibetan plateau. Encrypted radio miniaturization. The agency developed the RS-1 radio specifically for Tibetan agents, a rugged hand-cranked device that could transmit signals from 18,000 feet back to listening stations in Thailand. And cold weather survival intel. The data gathered at Camp Hale and on the plateau provided the U.S. military with its first comprehensive high-altitude combat doctrine, which was later utilized during operations in Afghanistan. The monks of Camp Hale eventually returned to their mountains, but the legends of the Colorado Tibetans remain. It's a story of faith meeting firepower, and a reminder that even the highest mountains in the world are not beyond the reach of the agency's long shadow. Next time on CIA Declassified, we move from the mountains of Tibet to the windows of Moscow. We examine Project Colton. How do you listen to a conversation through a closed window without ever planting a bug? We'll look at the declassified logs of the Inverton, a device that used infrared light to turn glass into a microphone. We explore the day the CIA realized that even a locked room has a voice. Join us for the glass ear. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.